Hey everyone, wait for a few people to get in here. Decided to start a little bit early, maybe chat with some people. Today I'm just going to be going over some different cases that have closed out or some of them may still be underway as well before the holidays. Just a major update. And then I thought we'd talk a little bit about Santa Claus. History of Santa Claus, Old St. Nick. Hey everyone. Hey. Wow, everybody popping in at once. Hey. Hello. Hello. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Feliz Navidad. Happy winter solstice. Whatever you celebrate, happy. Anna, I am so sorry. Anna, I'm so sorry. I don't know why that happens. I don't know who I have perturbed at YouTube that they do that, but I've heard other creators complain about that too. Everyone, please check if you are not subscribed again. Please subscribe. I'm glad you found me again. I really am. Hey, sweetie, I am doing really, really well. We survived the tornado, got everything back to normal. I got a haircut. It's all gone. Back to my short look. But don't worry, it'll grow back out. And doing well. I've lost almost 20 pounds. Feeling good. Doing really well. Can't complain. Thank you, sweetie. Thank you so much for hanging in there and watching me. Merry Christmas, Miss Horses. Hey, Miss Peaches. Thanks, Emily. Hello, Merry Christmas to everyone. Merry Christmas, Ron. All right. Thank you so much. I am so glad I got through that as well. No, Anna, it's not a Snuggie, but it is a very long jacket fleece sort of thing. We have about 100 of them. That's not a humble brag. That's not any sort of brag. It's just my wife and I tend to collect fleeces because we enjoy wearing them. So we have a lot. So if you're cold in Middle Tennessee, hit me up. I probably have something. Hey, Peyton. How are you? Well, I like you too. Thank you. Hey, Kimberly. Miss Peaches. I found a lot of people's pounds over the year. I ballooned up really nicely. Are y'all ready to talk about some true crime and some history? All right. Well, what should we start with? Of course, the Smollett case, or Smollett, however you want to term him. Jesse, let's just call him Jesse, found guilty on all 7 counts. Probably won't get any jail time, but was found guilty of faking a hate crime in 2019. So, yeah, I think justice was served there. I don't think he's going to serve any jail time. I think he'll probably get community service. He has too many bigwigs, both celebrity and politics, behind him. So I don't think there's going to be any real punishment there, but at least maybe it'll dissuade others from trying to fake hate crimes just for fame. Turns out he was dissatisfied with his salary of $65,000 an episode on Empire and was using that to get notoriety so that maybe they would give him a raise. Now, I don't know about you. $65,000 versus, I think, about 25 episodes a season. Let's just do the math, shall we? Let's do the math. Let's say he was in 18 of those episodes, which he was a main character. He was one of the sons of the owner of the record company, music company, at 65,000. So let's say he was in 70% of the episodes. He's looking at $1.1 million a year, but that wasn't enough for him. So his solution was to not only send a powder-laced and hate-filled letter to himself at the studio, but to also hire 2 extras on the show that also were his friends and personal trainers, pay them $3,500, which that's cheap for asking them what they were going to do, to stage a hate crime. And he had them dress up as Trump supporters in liberal Chicago and beat him up in front of a security camera. I got to say, Jesse just didn't think that one through. I could have faked that better than Jesse. I think any of us here could have. He just did not think that through. Turns out that anyway, his whole defense of his case was that now that the 2 Nigerian brothers were in cahoots with the Chicago PD, because remember, originally they weren't going to prosecute him, and then the feds got involved and kind of forced it. He's now saying that the Nigerian brothers were in cahoots with the government just to make an example of him. I got news for you, Jesse. You're not that important. No one wants to make an example of you. They want to make an example of faking hate crimes. But yeah, just an all-around dumpster fire. And now I want to ask a question. Let's take a poll. Type 1 if you think his Hollywood career is over. Type 2 if you think he'll get a part somewhere and still go on to be a celebrity. What do you think? I'm going to type 2 myself because I don't think his Hollywood career is over. I think someone will hire him and we'll still continue to see him make movies and do things like that. Right now, it's kind of neck and neck. And what's really disappointing, he was in the Mighty Ducks. That's like one of my favorite film series growing up was the Mighty Ducks. And just to think that he was in there. So it's kind of tied, and even a couple of the people that say, no, his career is over are saying I'm not really optimistic. So I think we'll be seeing Jesse in some other roles. Who knows? He'll probably even get a talk show. Jerry Springer, Maury Povich, Jesse Smollett. What else? We still have the Maxwell trial going on. Catherine. That cracks me up. Yes, let's talk about Alec Baldwin. Fires off a live round on the set of his new movie Rust and kills and kills a crew member. And yet it's not his fault. Okay, I have mixed feelings on this. First of all, let me address the interview that he recently did. I think that was like one of the worst things he could have done for himself. First of all, I don't think he's genuine. I don't think he's a good person. And that interview was just indicative of that. I don't think he did himself any favors coming off kind of like a jerk, like he did in that interview, basically taking all blame off of himself and putting it on someone else. Yes. The prop master had, and the assistant director had ultimate responsibility for checking that gun for live rounds. But anybody that's ever handled weaponry knows that if you're handled a weapon, you never point it at a person unless you're planning on shooting them. And two, especially, I agree with you, Emily. I absolutely agree with you. I like the other Baldwins much better than Alec. But if I'm handed a weapon, and I've done movies, if you very low budget horror films, but I have had to handle weapons, and when I was handed a gun that was supposed to either have a blank or not be loaded at all, I checked it. You simply, if it's magazine, you pull out the magazine, you check it. If it's a revolver, you flick it out, you check it, and you make sure that it is loaded the way it's supposed to be loaded. You announce it that you have a weapon, and you never ever point it at a crew member. I understand that the scene he was filming was supposed to be, him kind of firing at the camera, and that's fine. But in that case, you would point it at a drone or automated camera, never at your head of art, and pull anybody and pull the trigger. That just makes no sense. And I agree. Catherine, I think from what I gathered from that movie, it was very low budget, very rushed. And I think because he was a producer and the star, that a lot of the crew members were afraid of him and were probably afraid to say, hey, ooh, are you sure that gun is unloaded? And then there was the whole thing about them using those weapons to fire, target practice. There was just a lot of inconsistencies on that set. And I think what's going to happen, you're going to see Hollywood take prop guns out of the sequence, and you're literally going to have toy guns, and they'll add the shots and bullets in with CGI later on. Maybe that's just wishful, good. I don't know. Let's see, Miss Peaches. Emily D. Baker said he just handed the case against himself to the prosecution. Yep, I agree. I think if there is any criminal prosecution, it'll be toward him. I almost said prostitution. Same thing, but as he does with himself. But yeah, I don't think he is a nice person. I think he's a little off his nut, just like I think Mel Gibson's a little off his nut in a lot of ways. So, yeah. All right. What else is going on? Maxwell trial still ongoing. A lot of it is basically testimony of purported victims against and staffers against her. But a lot of the defense's case is tearing down and making examples of the witnesses, basically talking about implanted memories and things like that, which is an issue. If you've seen my my video on the McMartin preschool, kind of the same thing there, implanted memories, which can be a problem. But with everything that we have on Epstein and Maxwell, it's not really in the same league, though the whole position of implanted memories is a thing that needs to be considered. But anyway, be interested to see how that turns out. Also today, the case of Kim Hobbs in Minnesota, the police officer that was Kim Potter, excuse me, not Hobbs. The former Minnesota police officer that was convicted of accidentally shooting Dante Wright. A few months ago, remember the police officer that thought she was pulling her taser and then ended up shooting the suspect dead? She was found guilty today on 2 counts of manslaughter. She faces up to 7 years in prison, which I think seems a little low in my opinion. I mean, she did kill the dude. She did, yes, he had a warrant. He tried to run. He did his own part of it being wrong. But to accidentally discharge a weapon instead of your taser, that's just a whole other level of stupid. And she should not have been on the force if that was the case. So I think the verdict was just, but she'll probably face somewhere between 5 and 7 years in prison for that. I think it was good. I don't think she was the most well-trained police officer. She definitely was not on her game that day. Yes, when you're excited, the human brain can do a lot of things, and maybe she really did think she was reaching for her taser, but I know I have law enforcement in my family, so they always know what side their taser is, what side their weapon is, and they don't make that kind of mistake. So anyway, I'm glad she was found guilty. It was a wrongful killing, and that's all you can say. That's all you can say. Do you think we'll be discussing who ended Epstein's life in a few years when we get clues? Definitely possible. I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I don't believe in the 9/11 truther stuff. I don't buy into everything that Alex Jones is a prophet. I don't buy into all that. But when it comes to Epstein, there was just too much coincidence going on there to be a coincidence. If you get what I'm saying, I don't believe that he killed himself. If he did, he had help. He had help, and I don't know if it was willful. The fact that the cameras were conveniently off, the guards conveniently didn't see anything, and the fact that there is stuff out there on some of the most powerful people in the world, and he suddenly is silenced. I don't think he killed himself. If he's dead at all, people are going to go, Tracy's lost her nut. No. If he's dead at all, that is one man that has enough money to make himself disappear, or had others with enough money to make him disappear. He could be out there with plastic surgery under a totally different name. We'll never see him again. That's kind of my theory. I don't necessarily believe he's dead at all. I believe he could have been easily disappeared and could be living under a name in the witness protection program because he's that well connected. Call me crazy. That's the only conspiracy theory you'll ever see me buy into, but I just don't know if he's actually dead. And if he is, he didn't do it himself. He was silenced. He was absolutely silenced. What do you guys think? Guys and girls think? Do you think guys, girls, and everyone in between? What do you think? Was it murder? Was it suicide? Or is he still alive? What do you think? Drop your answer in the chat. And Anna, yes, you're absolutely right. If you know how to do it, regular people can disappear themselves. You can drop off the face of the earth if you really want to. And Catherine, yes, if your taser's on your Don, I wonder what happened to dexterous officers too. Girl, you're cracking me up tonight. You are cracking me up tonight. I agree, Anna. If he's dead, then murder is a definite possibility. No, I don't buy anything from Alex Jones at all. I do like to listen to him for entertainment value because it's funny. Let's face it. But if you've seen my deep dives I've done on Alex Jones, I did a 3-parter on him. It's just, it's all for entertainment value is the reason that I would watch him, nothing else. Not into QAnon. I've done deep dives on QAnon. Not into that. Not into any of that stuff. But this is the one conspiracy theory that I'll buy into, is that just too much of a, coincidence to be a coincidence. So what? We've talked about Potter. We've talked about Smollett. We've talked about Maxwell. Well, the Rittenhouse, we've already discussed that. Travis Scott. Yes, Travis Scott. I did a video on him a couple of weeks ago. I know there's been about $1 billion worth of lawsuits literally come in on that. I know they are discussing the potential for criminal indictments against possibly him, Drake, and maybe Live Nation, who puts on a lot of his, who put on the Astro World festival. Still, I don't. That one's rough. I do think there was a lot of negligence there. I do think that Live Nation did not do what they should have done. Certainly, Travis Scott is not known for controlling his crowd. As an entertainer, you have to control your crowd. In my video, I showed a lot of different celebrities. I mean, we're talking like super mega celebrities, far bigger than Travis Scott, like Freddie Mercury of Queen, stopping a concert and saying, calm down. We don't do that. Let them get up, pick them up. That's the difference between people that I'm fans of and Travis Scott. He thought that chaos would make him a better performer, and it goes to show. I know that he settled a lot of lawsuits with the people in the past that have been injured at his shows, but I think he might get prosecuted for this. I mean, I don't know if it's murder, but it's definitely contributing to the to manslaughter, if nothing else. And I think holding him accountable might prevent celebrities from just thinking that they can just go wild and shake it all and pump up the crowd. I mean, I've been in mosh pits before. I know how it gets in mosh pits. But most shows I've been at, if it got too wild, somebody would calm it down. So, yeah. Emmylou, that is definitely a good statement. I think depraved indifference is probably a good way to. Hey, Pamela. I think that's a very good way of putting it. I think they don't get it. They're kind of depraved in their own mind. They're depraved and live a very hedonistic lifestyle, which more power to you if you can afford it. But then they don't see how they pose a danger when they're doing public performances to this. It's just like, gosh, you're dating me here, but going all the way back to the satanic panic of the 80s, how people feared that rock and roll and other music was shaping a whole culture, which music does shape culture. Let's face it, causing more occult activity, causing drug abuse, causing, that, how we've gone from that fear of that to now it just being in our faces. I'm not saying that it's any kind of occult practices that is there. Not saying that at all. I think it's just pure indifference, just like you were saying. Pure apathy would be a good place. Hey, Pam, I'm glad you made it. They hired security, like he hired his security on TikTok, like found a security agency on that's like weird. Wow. But yes, if you go back and research anything on Travis Scott, you'll see he has a history of very out of control live performances. So what happened didn't surprise me, but just the caliber of it sickened me, if that makes sense. But you know what? It's almost Christmas. And you know who comes at Christmas? Santa Claus. Would you like to hear my research that I've done on the history of Santa Claus? Going on to happier topics. All right, well, let's talk about Santa. Did you know that the idea of Santa Claus dates all the way back to the Druids? Believe it or not, all the way back to pre-Christian times in Europe and Asia, when some of the earliest tribes celebrated Yule, which you've heard of that. There was a mystic creature, a mystic person that would leave gifts, usually of food, to people during the festival of Yule. He was called Wodan, also to be translated into Odin. So this is very much heavily encased in the Norse mythology, but that was the first idea of somebody coming during the festival of Yule, which would be during the month that we know as December. And then as Christianity started to take hold in Europe and even into the Middle East a little bit, you had those stories start changing a little bit. You had in Finland, you had an elf known as, and I'm going to mispronounce this, 𝐷𝐤𝐫𝐻, which literally translates as Christmas goat. You had St. Nicholas and Kris Kringle in some of the earliest of the Norse countries coming around to give presents, usually of food and other things on Christmas Eve. In Italy, you had the story of a woman Santa figure by the name of La Befana, who was a witch who rode a broomstick down the chimneys of Italian homes to deliver toys to the stockings of very lucky children. In the time of Henry VIII in England, you had Father Christmas. Now, Father Christmas is very similar. Prior, you kind of had, they took all forms, not necessarily male, not necessarily bearded or older, but you had kind of just a plethora. Sometimes they were animomorphic animals, such as in Finland was a goat, a kind of a goat man. But with Kris Kringle, and then later on into Father Christmas during the time of Henry VIII, the 1500s in the United Kingdom, you had, or in England at that time, you had the first mention of the older man with the long flowing beard, not necessarily white though, that wore long flowing green robes. Think of A Christmas Carol, the Ghost of Christmas Present. That would be Father Christmas. Thank you, Blues. I am so sorry. I am very honest about my shortcomings when it comes to pronouncing. I know I should be better being the topics that I cover. Please don't hold that against me. I'm so sorry. But 𝐷𝐤𝐫𝐻. Can I just call him the Christmas goat? Will you forgive me? But so Father Christmas was the first iteration of it being a gentleman and having long flowing robes and giving gifts of food and toys to all the good children. And at that time, Christmas was kind of called Christmastide. So think of it, Yuletide, Christmastide. You start seeing the first merging of pagan holidays with Christian holidays and kind of merging together. But thank you, Blues. I'm so sorry. I need to take a course on enunciation and pronunciation. I know I do. Sometimes the English words give me a hard time. If you've ever heard me say a one-syllable word, sometimes it draws out to about 3 syllables. So I apologize for that. But so Then we get into later Belgian, Swiss, and Dutch folklore, where you start seeing the character known as Sinterklaas, which is basically an early take on our Santa Claus. They basically took Father Christmas, switched out the browner beard for white, and the green flowing robes for red. And this is the first showing of what we would come to know as modern day Santa Claus. Now, how did Sinterklaas become Santa Claus? One word: capitalism. Because the United States, actually, Sinterklaas made his way from Europe, because Sinterklaas became the more popular personification of the Santa Claus character. And it actually made its way to the colonies even before the American Revolution. However, there was a real life man, a monk by the name of Nicholas, that lived in what is modern day Turkey, that actually is considered a saint by the Catholic Church, and he lived in about 280 A.D. in what is today known as Turkey, and actually saved people that were being trafficked, for lack of a better word. He helped children and women that were sold into dire consequences, and became the patron saint of the underclass, or the affirmed, even called the patron saint of prostitution sometimes, but for not the reasons that you would think. He actually got a lot of people out of it, and he became kind of entwined with this whole idea of Santa Claus, and kind of merged the two. Now, Saint Nicholas, in the areas in the Eastern Europe and the Middle East that celebrated him coming during the Christmas Yuletide celebration, that's where you have also the legend of the Krampus, which is a anamorphic demon goat kind of creature that is St. Nicholas's assistant. So you have St. Nicholas that would come and give to the good people gifts of nuts, breads, food, and I can certainly get down with that. And then you had the Krampus that would come and literally beat bad children with long reeds. So it was either St. Nicholas or the Krampus. I suppose it varies on what your idea of a good time is, which you would prefer. I don't judge. I might want to try the Krampus one year. Who knows? But so that's where the Krampus came from. But when St. Nicholas kind of merged with Sinterklaas, the Krampus was kind of lost to time. He has been revived of late as a horror character in recent horror films, but he was kind of lost in time. But Sinterklaas and St. Nicholas, as well as Kris Kringle and other personifications of Santa Claus, including the Witch of Italy, because that's where Santa kind of gets his magical powers, kind of all merged and then came over to the colonies as early as 1776. And the idea of Santa Claus was pretty well ingrained in the American story time, even before the American Revolution. So once the United States became a separate country, you already had this idea of St. Nicholas or Santa Claus coming on Christmas Eve. So it first became wildly popular among the Dutch families in early New York, 1774, when they published a huge magazine article on them at one point. But where it really started to take off was in 1809, when Washington Irving, well-known author of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, as well as other well-known American classics, kind of wrote a series of stories about Santa Claus and St. Nicholas, referring to him as the patron saint of New York. And he became kind of a mainstay of New York. And his look kind of evolved into a more American looking, the suit rather than the flowing robes, the white beards, and then capitalism. 1820 is where you started seeing a lot of a commercialization of Santa Claus. You started seeing the first stores, even the first early iterations of shopping malls, and they caught on to the whole thing about Santa. Bring Santa in, appear to get the kids excited about Christmas. And so that's where it kind of started. In 1822, Clement Clark Moore, he was an Episcopal minister, wrote an account of a visit from St. Nicholas, also known as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And from that poem, you get the idea of Santa coming while you're asleep, coming down your chimney, driving a red sleigh pulled by 8 tiny reindeer. This is far before Rudolph. We're going to talk about Rudolph, but this is the original. Donner, Blitzen, Prancer, Dasher, Dancer, Blitzen, the original OG reindeer. So that's where all of that came from. And the popularity of that poem absolutely blew up. And as a result, people began looking forward to the yearly visit of St. Nicholas, or Santa Claus, as he was now known, since Washington Irving made him out to be a patron saint of early New York. Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, now we have Santa Claus, patron saint of New York. And then you had "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and now everybody's all aflutter with Santa Claus. In Germany, he dresses up in a long robe and has a druid-looking elf guy. They go to houses with young kids. Yep. I'm sure a lot of the European countries still maintain their pure form of the Santa Claus character. But it's kind of us Americans. We take everything and kind of put it together and supercharge him and turn him into like a ultimate Marvel or DC Santa Claus. It's just, go big or go home sort of thing. But so by the 1840s, with the popularity of the poem, you had magazines publishing that image that we're so familiar of with Santa Claus. In 1841, children were going to certain stores to see Santa Clauses and Santa Claus models. And then in the early 1890s, the Salvation Army started dressing their bell ringers as Santa Clauses to generate more donations. In 1881, Thomas Nast put Moore's poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," to pen and drew what is known as the Santa that we know, as well as the reindeer, and his wife, Mrs. Claus, for Harper's Weekly. And we are in modern day Santa. Santa went on pretty well with the Coca-Cola Santa Claus. Absolutely, Anna. And then, of course, you had it popularized in movies. Miracle on 34th Street with Natalie Wood. That was simply a movie to promote the idea of Santa Claus. And who is behind that? Macy's. If you have to talk about Santa Claus, you have to talk about Macy's. That's where the whole idea of the naughty and nice list sitting on Santa's lap. Macy's was one of the first stores to bring in a Santa Claus. The 1934 Christmas song, "Santa Claus is Coming to Town," kind of backed all that up. And Macy's used it to commercialize Christmas and have it, brought to you in the form of the Macy's Day Parade, as well as buying lots of toys for your children. But where did Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer come from? Again, capitalism. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was a story that was published in a book, a Christmas book in 1939 in Montgomery Ward department stores, where he told the story of an underdog reindeer with a red nose that eventually saved the day and allowed Santa to make his deliveries on a very foggy Christmas Eve. And it was supposed to uplift those that were different, to make the underdog win. And it ended up being a very popular story. It ended up being a very popular poem, a very popular storybook, and eventually a very popular Christmas carol recorded by cowboy great Gene Autry. And it sold over 2 million copies and has been translated into 25 languages. And of course, then comes Burl Ives edition, which we know from the 1964 claymation special. And that's where Rudolph came from. So both Santa as we know it and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer came from the minds of two department stores, Macy's and Montgomery Ward. So when people talk about take the commercialization of Christmas out of Christmas, the commercialization was always there. Always there. And you had people that thought out of the box and made it into an American institution. What would Christmas be without Santa Claus and Rudolph? What would Christmas be all over the world without Santa Claus and Rudolph? These stories have gone all over the world. As I said, 25 different languages within a year being published in the 1930s, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. How many times have you heard "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" uttered in different languages? I mean, it gets me all ooey gooey inside just thinking about it. We watched Santa Claus is Coming to Town and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer the other night. We watch them every Christmas. It's kind of a tradition, along with Home Alone, Home Alone 2, Christmas Vacation, and Jingle All the Way. Some of my very favorite Christmas movies. Yeah, horses, I get what you mean. I guess it kind of makes it seem cheap and drab. But, how many times has a thought of an underdog winning like Rudolph or Santa, being magical Santa made a child smile? That's the way I look at it. Heck, makes me smile, and I'm 46 years old. I really wish that I still believe in the spirit of Santa. I really do. If I had children, I would definitely tell them about Santa. Well, I hope you enjoyed tonight. I certainly did. I have a couple of very good videos coming out for you this weekend. Next week, I'm diving into the new year with Rampage Crime. I have the story, Catherine, if Walmart comes up with a new substitute for Catherine, it would probably be a Santa Claus with red cover halls driving a Ford F-150 dually with a Cummins engine and an Allison transmission that can make it through all kinds of mud to deliver the presents. And I say that because I am a redneck. But so next week I have a Rampage Crime coming. We're going to look at the Uber massacre that happened in 2016. We're also going to look at the story of Cookie Thornton, which shot up a St. Louis area city council meeting in the 90s. And so I'm going to start looking into stuff like that. We're also going to finish up my exploitation list with Girls Gone Wild, another crazy story, and then we'll get back into more regular crimes. I've got Jeffrey Dahmer. I've got John Wayne Gacy. I've got a lot of great things coming for you. So I hope you'll enjoy it. I really appreciate everybody sticking with me through the year. I know I've been a little off my game the last 2 weeks, but I apologize for that. But I'm back, and I wish you all the most Merry Christmas that you can have. I love you all, and I could not do this without you. You make this so much fun. I love doing this, but I love especially doing it for other people that enjoy it too. And with that being said, have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and until next week, or actually tomorrow when my next video will come out. Keto and Crime.